The space around the Sigma Nebula looked like a graveyard. Broken pieces of metal floated everywhere, spinning slowly in the darkness. Some pieces were as big as buildings. Others were small enough to hold in your hand. All of them had once been. Part of mighty warships. Admiral Vexthara stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the destruction. Her 4 arms moved quickly across the control panels, checking damage reports from what remained of her fleet. The numbers made her sick. 300 ships. That was all she had left from the 12,000 that had started this war 7 years ago. The Krex Empire had won. Everyone knew it, even if nobody wanted to say it out loud. "Admiral, we're getting surrender requests from the Helion sector," reported Commander Zektar from his station. His blue skin had turned pale with fear. 3 more species want to negotiate with the Krex. Vexthara's main eyes closed in pain, while her smaller eyes kept watching the tactical display. The Krex had them surrounded. 2,000 enemy ships formed a perfect circle around the nebula. There was no way out. How long until they attack? She asked. 6 hours, maybe less, Zektar replied. Their battle cruisers are moving into position now. The bridge fell silent, except for the quiet hum of failing systems. Everyone knew what 6 hours meant. It meant they had 6 hours to live. The war had started when the Krex Empire decided they wanted to rule the entire galaxy. They had ships that could do something no other race could manage. They could phase shift. One moment a Krex ship would be right in front of you. The next moment, it would disappear and appear somewhere else. You couldn't hit what you couldn't see coming. The Galactic Coalition had tried everything. They had built bigger guns, stronger shields, faster ships. They had tried surrounding the Krex fleets, tried trapping them in gravity wells, tried hitting them with everything they had all at once. Nothing worked. The Krex would just phase away and attack from a different angle. Lieutenant Mordak looked up from his communication station. "Admiral, we're receiving final messages from the home worlds. They want to know if we have any hope left to give them." Vexthara thought about her own planet. Her people were farmers and artists. They had never hurt anyone before the Krex came. Now her home world was preparing for invasion. Her children were hiding in underground shelters, waiting to see if their mother would come home. "Tell them we're still fighting," she said quietly. It was a lie, and everyone on the bridge knew it. But sometimes lies were kinder than truth. Tactical officer suddenly straightened up. "Admiral, I'm picking up new contacts on long-range sensors. More Krex ships?" Vexthara asked. She tried to keep the despair out of her voice. "No, Admiral, these are different. Unknown configuration. They're coming in fast, faster than anything we've seen before." On the main screen, tiny dots appeared at the edge of sensor range. They were moving toward the battle zone at incredible speed. As they got closer, the computer began to analyze their design. "Ships are small," the tactical officer reported. "Maybe 200 meters long each. Very basic construction. I count 50 vessels total." Vexthara felt confused. 50 ships? Against 2,000 Krex vessels? Whoever these people were, they were either very brave or very stupid. "Are they coalition?" she asked. "Negative, Admiral. I've never seen this design before." "Wait, I'm getting a transmission." The communication came through clearly, despite the distance. The voice was strange, with an accent none of them had heard before. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call. Sorry we're late to the party." Everyone on the bridge looked at each other. Earth? Nobody had heard of any planet called Earth. "Captain Morrison," Vexthara replied. "This is Admiral Vexthara of the Coalition Fleet. I don't know who you are, but you need to turn around right now. We're facing 2,000 Krex battleships. Your 50 vessels won't make any difference except to get yourselves killed." There was a pause before Morrison answered. Admiral, with respect, we didn't come all this way just to turn around. We've been watching this war for a while now. We think we can help. You've been watching? Vexthara was surprised. How long? Have your people had space travel? Oh, we just figured out faster-than-light travel about 18 months ago. But we've had radio telescopes pointed at your part of the galaxy for decades. We've been listening to your communications, learning your languages, studying your tactics. Vexthara felt a chill run down her spine. A species that had only achieved FTL travel 18 months ago? These humans were barely more advanced than primitives. What could they possibly do against the Krex Empire? Captain Morrison, I appreciate your courage, but this is hopeless. The Krex can phase shift through dimensions. We can't even hit them. Most of the time. They've destroyed 97% of our fleet. You should save your people and go home. Admiral, we know about the phase shifting. We've studied every battle you've fought for the past 7 years. We've analyzed your tactics, your failures, your small victories. We think we understand something you don't. And what's that? The Krex aren't unbeatable. You've just been fighting them wrong. Before Vexthara could respond, her sensors officer called out urgently. Admiral, the human ships are decelerating. They're taking up positions around our fleet. On the screen, the 50 human vessels spread out in a loose formation. Their ships looked nothing like Coalition designs. They were angular, brutal-looking things with no artistic curves or elegant lines. It looked like they had been built for one purpose only: war. Captain Morrison, Vexthara said, your ships look very different from ours. Yes, ma'am. We build them differently where we come from. We've been fighting wars on our planet for thousands of years. We learned some things about ship design that might surprise you. The tactical officer reported new movement. Admiral, the Krex fleet is responding to the human arrival. They're moving their battle cruisers forward. How long until they reach us? Vexthara asked. 2 hours. Morrison's voice came through the speakers again. Admiral, I'd like to request a meeting. I want to show you our battle plan. Your battle plan? Vexthara couldn't hide her doubt. Captain, no offense, but you have 50 ships against 2,000. What kind of battle plan could possibly work? The kind that ends this war in the next hour. The confidence in the human's voice was startling. Either these humans were completely insane, or they knew something that the entire Galactic Coalition had missed. Very well, Captain Morrison. Transport over to my flagship. But I warn you, we don't have much time. Understood, Admiral. Morrison out. As the communication ended, Vexthara looked around her bridge. Her officers were staring at the tactical display, watching the human ships move into position. The vessels were so small compared to the massive Krex battle cruisers approaching them. Admiral, Commander Zektar said quietly, do you think they really have a chance? Vexthara watched the human ships on her screen. They moved with purpose, taking up positions that made no tactical sense according to everything she had learned about space warfare. These humans were either going to save them all, or they were about to witness the fastest military defeat in galactic history. I don't know, she admitted, but right now, they're the only hope we have. Outside the ship, the Krex fleet continued its slow advance. In 2 hours, the final battle would begin. The question was whether 50 primitive human ships could somehow accomplish what 12,000 Coalition vessels had failed to do. The answer would determine the fate of the entire galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison materialized on the bridge of the Coalition flagship in a shimmer of blue light. Admiral Vexthara had expected him to look alien and strange, but he looked surprisingly normal. He was tall and lean with dark hair and calm brown eyes. His uniform was simple, dark blue with silver markings. 2 other humans appeared beside him. One was a woman with short red hair and sharp green eyes. The other was a man with broad shoulders and scars on his hands. They looked around the bridge with curiosity, taking in every detail. "Admiral Vexthara," Morrison said, stepping forward. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. This is Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan, my tactical officer, and Major Alex Carter, our Marine commander." Vexthara studied the three humans. They seemed so ordinary, so unremarkable. It was hard to believe they thought they could change the course of a war that had been lost for years. "Captain Morrison, I'll be direct with you. We've been fighting the Kreks for 7 years. We've lost 97% of our fleet. Our best generals, our finest tacticians, our most advanced technology, none of it has worked. What makes you think 50 ships can make a difference?" Morrison smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a predator made before attacking. "Admiral, may I ask you a question? In all your battles with the Kreks, have you ever fought an enemy that couldn't phase shift?" "Of course. We fought many different species before the Kreks invented phase-shifting technology." "And how did those battles go?" Vexthara thought for a moment. "We won most of them. Coalition tactics are very effective against conventional forces." "Exactly," Sullivan said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was crisp and professional. "You know how to fight normal enemies. The problem is, you've been trying to fight the Kreks like they're normal enemies." "But they're not normal," Commander Zektar interrupted. "They can disappear and reappear anywhere. How do you fight something you can't predict?" Major Carter laughed, a sound that made several coalition officers step back. "Commander, with respect, everything can be predicted if you watch it long enough. The Kreks might be able to phase shift, but they're not magic." Morrison moved to the tactical display. "Admiral, may I show you something? Computer, display the last 5 Kreks battle formations." The holographic display showed 5 different Kreks attacks from recent battles. The enemy ships moved in complex patterns, appearing and disappearing across the battlefield. "What do you see?" Morrison asked. "Chaos," Vexthara replied. "Random attacks from unpredictable positions. Look closer." "Sullivan, show them." The red-haired woman stepped forward and manipulated the display. "Computer, highlight repeated movement. Patterns." Suddenly, the chaos made sense. Red lines appeared, connecting similar movements. The Kreks weren't random at all. They followed specific patterns, repeated formations, predictable attack sequences. "They have a doctrine," Sullivan explained. "Like any military force, they train their pilots to follow certain procedures. Phase shifting is just a tool. The thinking behind it is still the same." The coalition officers stared at the display in shock. How had they missed something so obvious? "We've been watching your battles for years," Morrison continued. "Every engagement, every tactic you've tried. We've also been studying the Kreks' responses. They're good at what they do, but they've never faced an enemy that could adapt to their methods." "Because we've never been able to hit them when they phase shift," Vexthara said. "Exactly. But what if you could?" Carter stepped forward. "Admiral, what do you know about nuclear weapons?" The question surprised everyone. "Nuclear weapons? Those are primitive devices. We stopped using them thousands of years ago when we developed plasma cannons and antimatter torpedoes." "Why did you stop using them?" "Because they're crude, inefficient, and the radiation they produce interferes with most advanced technology." Morrison and his officers exchanged glances. "Show her," Morrison said quietly. Sullivan activated a small device on her wrist. A new display appeared, showing technical readouts and energy signatures. "Admiral, this is data from a nuclear explosion in space. Look at the radiation patterns." Vexthara studied the information. The radiation spread out in a sphere, creating interference with various types of energy fields. Then she saw it. The radiation patterns matched exactly with the energy, signatures that Krex ships produced when they phase shifted. The radiation interferes with phase shifting, she whispered. Not just interferes, Carter said grimly. It stops it completely. A nuclear explosion creates a dead zone where phase shifting is impossible. The Krex would be trapped in normal space, but nuclear weapons are banned by galactic law, Commander Zektar protested. No civilized species uses them anymore. The three humans looked at each other, and Morrison spoke carefully. Commander, we're not from your civilization. We've been fighting wars on our home planet for our entire history. We never stopped using nuclear weapons because we never had the luxury of thinking they were too crude. You still use nuclear weapons? Vexthara asked, horrified. We use whatever works, Sullivan replied matter-of-factly. We have plasma cannons, too, and particle beams, and antimatter missiles. But we also carry nuclear weapons, because sometimes the old ways are the best ways. How many nuclear weapons do your ships carry? Vexthara asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Each of our ships carries approximately 50 nuclear warheads of various sizes, Morrison said. Our flagship carries 200. The bridge fell silent. 50 ships, each carrying 50 nuclear weapons. That was enough firepower to destroy entire planets. Captain Morrison, Vexthara said slowly, are you telling me that you plan to use nuclear weapons against the Krex fleet? Not directly, Admiral. We're going to use them to create radiation fields that prevent phase shifting. Once the Krex are trapped in normal space, we can fight them with conventional tactics. But there are 2,000 Krex ships out there. Even if you could stop them from phase shifting, how do 50 ships fight 2,000? Carter smiled, and it was even more frightening than Morrison's smile had been. Admiral, how many wars has your species fought? We've had 3 major conflicts in our recorded history. And how long did they last? The longest was about 2 years. Humans have been at war for most of our history. We've fought hundreds of wars, some lasting decades. We've learned things about combat that peaceful species never need to learn. Morrison walked back to the tactical display. Admiral, your people fight with honor. You follow rules. You try to minimize casualties. You give your enemies chances to surrender. These are good things, admirable things. But they're not effective against an enemy that doesn't follow the same rules, Sullivan added. The Krex don't. Fight with honor, Carter continued. They fight to win at any cost. The problem is, you've been trying to fight them honorably anyway. What are you suggesting? Vexthara asked, though she was beginning to understand. Morrison's expression became deadly serious. We're suggesting that you let us fight this battle the human way. No honor, no rules, no mercy, just victory. And what does the human way involve? Nuclear mines to create phase disruption fields, Sullivan said, counting on her fingers. Unpredictable attack patterns that break their tactical expectations. Targeting their command ships first to create confusion. Using smaller ships to outmaneuver their larger ones. And if necessary, Carter added quietly, ramming attacks and boarding actions. Ramming attacks? Commander Zektar looked shocked. That's suicide. No, Commander, Morrison corrected him. Suicide is what you've been doing for 7 years. This is warfare. Vexthara looked at the 3 humans standing before her. They were offering to save her people, to save the entire galaxy. But the price was letting them fight a battle in a way that went against everything civilized species believed in. Captain Morrison, if I agree to this plan, what guarantee do I have that you can win? Morrison met her eyes directly. Admiral, I can't guarantee we'll win, but I can guarantee that if we lose, it won't be because we held back. The tactical officer suddenly called out, Admiral, Krex fleet is accelerating. They'll be in weapons range in 90 minutes. Vexthara looked at her officers, then back at the humans. Captain Morrison, what do you need from us? Stay out of our way and be ready to support us when we create openings. Your ships are tough enough to take advantage of any gaps we create in their formation. And after the battle? Morrison's smile returned, cold and confident. Admiral, let's worry about winning first. Then we can discuss what comes next. As alarms began sounding throughout the ship, Vexthara realized she was about to witness something unprecedented. For the first time in 7 years, someone was going to fight the Krex Empire without following the rules. She just hoped the galaxy would survive what the humans were about to unleash. Captain Morrison moved to the center of the bridge and activated his portable holographic display. The device projected a 3-dimensional map of the entire battle zone, showing the positions of both fleets. Red dots represented the Krex ships, closing in around them. Blue dots showed the coalition vessels huddled in the nebula, and 50 tiny green dots marked the human ships spread out in what looked like a random pattern. Admiral Vexthara, this is how we're going to win, Morrison said, his voice calm and steady. The coalition officers gathered around the display. Lieutenant Commander Sullivan stepped forward and began manipulating the projection, showing different phases of the human battle plan. Phase 1, Sullivan explained, is disruption. We're going to deploy nuclear mines throughout the battlefield before the Krex reach weapons range. The radiation from these mines will create dead zones where phase shifting is impossible. She highlighted several areas on the map with yellow circles. Each mine creates a disruption field approximately 10 kilometers wide. We'll position them along the most likely Krex approach routes. Commander Zektar studied the pattern, but the Krex could simply avoid the mines. They have 2,000 ships. They can attack from any direction. Major Carter laughed grimly. Commander, you're still thinking like someone who's been losing this war. The mines aren't just weapons. They're bait. Vexthara asked. Morrison nodded. The Krex have been winning for 7 years using the same tactics. They're confident, maybe overconfident. When they see our mines, they'll think they understand our strategy. They'll try to destroy the mines while staying out of the radiation zones, which is exactly what we want them to do, Sullivan continued. While they're focused on the mines, they won't notice the real trap. The display changed, showing new elements of the plan. Small symbols appeared throughout the battlefield, moving in complex patterns. Phase 2 is misdirection, Morrison explained. Our ships will appear to retreat, following the same failed tactics your people have used before. The Krex will think they're seeing another conventional attack. But you're not retreating, Vexthara said, beginning to understand. No, we're hurting them, Carter said with satisfaction. Every retreat will push them toward specific positions. Every apparent mistake will guide them where we want them to go. Sullivan manipulated the display again. Human military doctrine calls this controlling the battlefield. Instead of reacting to enemy movements, we make the enemy react to ours. The Krex have never faced an enemy that could do this, Morrison added. They're used to opponents who fight defensively, trying to protect their ships and minimize losses. We're going to do the opposite. The display showed the third phase of the plan. Human ships moved in aggressive patterns, striking at multiple points simultaneously, while Krex vessels found themselves trapped in the radiation zones. Phase 3 is elimination, Morrison said coldly. Once the Krex are trapped in normal space, we'll destroy their command ships first. Without leadership, their formation will collapse. How can you be sure you can destroy their command ships? Vexthara asked. They're heavily armored and protected by escorts. Carter smiled, and several coalition officers stepped back instinctively. Admiral, may I show you something about human ship design? Morrison nodded, and Carter activated another display. This one showed the internal layout of a human warship. Unlike coalition vessels, which had spacious corridors and comfortable living areas, human ships were cramped and efficient. Most of the internal space was dedicated to weapons and ammunition. Our ships carry more firepower per ton than any vessel in your fleet, Carter explained. We don't waste space on comfort or luxury. Every cubic meter is designed for war. But, more importantly, Sullivan added, our ships are designed to be expendable. The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Expendable. Coalition ships were built to last, to protect their crews, to return home safely. Human ships were built to accomplish their mission at any cost. You're talking about suicide attacks. Commander Zektar said, his voice barely a whisper. We're talking about winning, Morrison corrected. If ramming a damaged ship into a Krex command vessel saves 1,000 coalition lives, then that's what we'll do. Your crews will agree to this? Vextara asked. Admiral, every human in this fleet volunteered for this mission? Carter replied. We knew the odds when we came here. We came anyway, because this is what humans do. We fight, the tactical officer at his station called out urgently. Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting movement in the Krex fleet. They're beginning their final approach. Morrison looked at his chronometer. Right on schedule. Admiral, I need to return to my ship to coordinate the attack. Do we have your permission to proceed? Vexthara looked around her bridge. Her officers were staring at the human battle plan with expressions of horror and fascination. What the humans were proposing went against every principle of civilized warfare. It was brutal, ruthless, and completely without honor. It was also the first plan she'd seen in 7 years that might actually work. Captain Morrison, I have one question. After this battle, assuming we survive, what happens then? What do humans want from the galaxy? Morrison paused, his hand halfway to his communicator. Admiral, right now we just want to stop the Krex from killing everyone. We can discuss politics after we've won the war. And if the coalition doesn't approve of your methods? The 3 humans exchanged glances. Sullivan spoke first. Admiral, with respect, we didn't ask for permission to use these methods. We're using them because they work. The galaxy has been at war for 7 years, Carter added. Millions of people have died because nobody was willing to do what needed to be done. We're willing. Morrison activated his communicator. All human ships, this is Morrison. Execute Battle Plan Alpha. Repeat, execute Battle Plan Alpha. Through the viewports. Vexthara could see the human ships beginning to move. They spread out in a pattern that looked chaotic, but she now understood was carefully planned. Each ship knew exactly where it needed to be and what it needed to do. Admiral, Morrison said, preparing to transport back to his ship. In about 30 minutes, this war is going to change completely. Your people might not like how we fight, but they'll like the results. Captain, one more question. How many wars has your species fought? Morrison looked tired suddenly, older than his apparent years. Admiral, humans have been fighting wars for over 5,000 years. We've had 2 world wars that killed millions of people each. We've had hundreds of smaller conflicts. We've never known a time when humans weren't fighting humans somewhere. That sounds terrible, Nexthara said softly. It is terrible, Sullivan. Agreed. But it taught us things that peaceful species never learn. It taught us how to win wars that can't be won. It taught us how to defeat enemies that seem unbeatable. And most importantly, Carter added, it taught us that sometimes the only way to have peace is to be very, very good at war. The 3 humans activated their transporters and disappeared in shimmers of light. Vexthara was left standing on her bridge, watching the human ships take their positions for the coming battle. Admiral, Commander Zektar said quietly, Do you think they can really do it? Can they actually win? Vexthara watched the display as the Krex fleet continued its advance. 2,000 ships against 50. By every measure of military logic, it should be impossible, but she had seen something in the humans' eyes that she hadn't seen in 7 years of war. Not hope, not desperation, not even courage. She had seen certainty. The humans weren't hoping to win. They were planning to win. "Commander," she said finally, "in 30 minutes we're going to find out what happens when someone fights the Krex Empire without rules." On the display, the first human ships began deploying their nuclear mines. The final battle was about to begin, and for the first time since the war started, Admiral Vexthara allowed herself to believe that they might actually survive. The humans had arrived late to the war, but they were about to show the galaxy what they had learned in 5,000 years of fighting each other. The Krex fleet came forward like a wall of death. 2,000 ships moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. Admiral Vexthara watched from her bridge as the enemy approached, feeling the same hopeless dread that had haunted her for 7 years. And everything changed. Captain Jake Morrison's voice came through the communication system, calm and steady. "All coalition ships, this is Morrison. Hold your positions and do not engage until ordered. We'll handle the opening moves." On the tactical display, the 50 human ships suddenly broke apart. Instead of staying together, like every military doctrine demanded, they scattered in all directions. Some headed toward the approaching Krex fleet. Others moved away at high speed. A few seemed to disappear entirely behind chunks of space debris. "What are they doing?" Commander Zektar asked in confusion. "They're splitting their forces. The Krex will destroy them one by one. Watch," Admiral Vexthara said quietly. She was beginning to understand that humans did nothing without a reason. The lead Krex ships opened fire first, sending streams of energy toward the nearest human vessels. The human ships didn't try to fight back. Instead, they ran. Their small, fast ships darted away from the enemy fire, leading the Krex deeper into the battlefield. "They're retreating already," one of the coalition officers said with disappointment. But Vexthara noticed something else. As the human ships retreated, they were dropping small objects behind them. The objects spread out across the battlefield like seeds, too small for the Krex sensors to detect as threats. Nuclear mines. The first mine exploded 5 minutes into the battle. A brilliant flash of light erupted between 2 Krex cruisers, followed by an expanding sphere of deadly radiation. The 2 Krex ships, caught in the middle of a phase shift maneuver, suddenly became visible in solid dot. Then the human ship that had been running away turned around and destroyed both cruisers with concentrated plasma fire. "Impossible, Commander." Zektar breathed, but it was just the beginning. More mines exploded across the battlefield, each one creating a zone where phase shifting became impossible. The Krex, confused by this new tactic, tried to avoid the radiation zones. But every time they moved to avoid one trap, they flew into another. Captain Lisa Hayes commanded the human destroyer, New York, as it led a group of Krex ships into what looked like a safe area. The Krex followed, confident they could destroy the small human vessel once they got close enough. They didn't notice the damaged coalition ship drifting nearby until it was too late. Hayes had positioned her ship so the Krex would chase her directly past the wreckage. When they did, hidden nuclear mines attached to the debris exploded simultaneously. 12 Krex ships found themselves trapped in normal space, unable to phase, away from the human weapons that suddenly appeared from 3 directions. Hayes and her squadron destroyed all 12 ships in less than 2 minutes. "Magnificent," Vexthara whispered. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Brooks was demonstrating another human tactic on the far side of the battlefield. His squadron moved in a pattern he called the Wolf Pack. Instead of attacking as a single unit, his ships spread out and struck from multiple angles simultaneously. The Kreks had never faced this kind of attack before. Their tactical computers were designed to track large formations, not individual ships, attacking from random directions. Brooks' ships would appear, strike at weak points in the enemy formation, then disappear before the Kreks could respond. One moment, a Kreks battleship would be leaving an attack formation. The next moment, 3 human ships would appear from different directions, destroy the battleship's engines and command section, then vanish again before the escorts could react. Without their lead ship, the Kreks formation would fall apart, making them easier targets for the next wave of human attacks. "They're not fighting like a fleet," Commander Zektar observed. "They're fighting like individuals." "No," Vextar corrected him. "They're fighting like predators." And they were. Each human ship acted independently, but all their actions supported the same goal. When one ship drew enemy fire, another would attack from behind. When a human ship was damaged, 2 others would cover its retreat, while a 4th ship took its place. The Kreks tried to adapt, but human unpredictability made adaptation impossible. Every time the enemy thought they understood the human pattern, the humans would change it. Major Patricia Carter was leaving one of the most dangerous missions of the battle. Her ship, along with 5 others, was racing directly toward the largest Kreks command vessel. It looked like a suicide run, and the Kreks ships moved to intercept them. But Carter wasn't planning to ram the enemy ship. Instead, she used her ship's speed to get close enough for a boarding action. At the last second, her ship released a cloud of small pods that attached themselves to the Kreks hull. "Boarding pods launched," Carter reported calmly, "beginning hull breach in 30 seconds. The Kreks had never experienced boarding actions before. Their ships were designed to fight at long range using phase-shifting tactics. They had no preparation for enemies who would actually try to get inside their vessels. Carter and her Marines cut through the Kreks hull and fought their way to the ship's reactor core. They didn't try to capture the ship. They just planted nuclear charges and left. The explosion tore the Kreks command ship apart from the inside out. With their command vessel destroyed, the entire Kreks formation began to fall apart. Ship captains who had been following orders suddenly found themselves without leadership. Some tried to retreat. Others attempted to continue the attack on their own. The humans hunted them all. Captain Morrison coordinated the final phase of the battle from his flagship. "All ships, execute Protocol 7. Target remaining command vessels." Protocol 7 turned out to be the systematic destruction of Kreks leadership. Human ships ignored the smaller enemy vessels and focused entirely on command ships, communications relays, and flag officers. The battle became a slaughter, but not the kind anyone had expected. The Kreks, who had been winning the war for 7 years, suddenly found themselves being destroyed by an enemy they had considered primitive. Human ships worked in perfect coordination, despite appearing to act randomly. When a Kreks ship tried to escape, human vessels would appear to block its path. When enemy ships grouped together for defense, nuclear mines would explode in their midst, trapping them for human weapons to finish off. "Admiral," the tactical officer reported, "Kreks fleet is beginning a general retreat." Vexthara looked at her chronometer. The battle had lasted exactly 37 minutes. In that time, the humans had destroyed over 600 Kreks ships, while losing only 8 of their own vessels. "Captain Morrison," Vexthara called over the communications channel, "the enemy is retreating." "Should we pursue?" Morrison's response was immediate. "Negative, Admiral. Let them run. They'll spread word about what happened here. You want them to escape? Admiral, fear is a weapon too. Every Kreks ship that escapes will tell others that humans can't be beaten using their old tactics. Word will spread through their empire that the phase-shifting advantage is gone. As the surviving Krex ships fled the battlefield, Vextara tried to understand what she had just witnessed. The humans had not just won a battle. They had changed the entire nature of the war. Captain Morrison, how did you know your tactics would work? Because we've used them before, Admiral. Everything we did today, we learned fighting each other. The Wolf Pack tactics, the boarding actions, the mine warfare, the systematic targeting of command structures. Humans have been doing these things to each other for thousands of years. And now you're doing them to the Krex. Yes, ma'am. The Krex made one big mistake. They thought superior technology was enough to win a war. But wars aren't won by technology. They're won by warriors who know how to use whatever they have. The battlefield around them was littered with the wreckage of Krex ships. In less than an hour, 50 human vessels had accomplished what 12,000 coalition ships couldn't do in 7 years. The war was far from over, but for the first time since it began, Admiral Vextara believed it could be won. The silence after the battle was almost as shocking as the battle itself. For 7 years, the sound of Krex weapons had filled the galaxy. Now there was only the quiet hum of human ships moving through the wreckage, hunting down the last few. Enemy vessels that had tried to hide among the debris. Admiral Vextara stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display in amazement. Red dots representing Krex ships continued to disappear one by one as human hunters found them. There was no mercy, no attempt to take prisoners. The humans were methodically eliminating every enemy vessel they could find. Captain Morrison, she called over the communications channel, the immediate threat has been neutralized. Shouldn't we begin rescue operations for Krex survivors? Morrison's reply came back cold and final. Admiral, there are no Krex survivors. We don't take prisoners from an enemy that showed no mercy to your people for 7 years. But the laws of war state that. Admiral, with respect, your laws of war are the reason you've been losing. We're fighting by different rules now. Commander Zektar looked uncomfortable. Admiral, this is not how civilized species conduct warfare. Before Vextara could respond, Morrison's voice came through the speakers again. All human ships, this is Morrison. Execute Protocol 8. Begin pursuit operations. On the display, the human fleet suddenly split apart again. Instead of regrouping to celebrate their victory, the 50 ships scattered in different directions. Each one was chasing a different group of fleeing Krex vessels. Captain Morrison, what is Protocol 8? Vextara asked. Complete elimination of enemy forces in this sector, Admiral. We're not going to let them regroup and come back with reinforcements. You're going to chase them across the entire sector? We're going to chase them across the entire galaxy if necessary. Vextara felt a chill run down her spine. The humans weren't just winning a battle. They were hunting an entire species with the same cold efficiency they had shown in the Fight. Major. Carter's voice came over the communications channel from one of the pursuit ships. Morrison, this is Carter. I've got a group of 12 Krex ships heading for the hyperspace jump point at coordinates 77 Alpha. Intercept and destroy, Carter. Don't let any of them escape. Copy that. Beginning attack run now. Through long-range sensors, Vextara watched Carter's ship catch up with the fleeing Krex vessels. The enemy ships tried to reach the jump point that would let them escape to hyperspace. They almost made it. Carter's ship released a spread of nuclear torpedoes just as the lead Krex vessel was entering the jump sequence. The radiation from the explosions disrupted the hyperspace field, trapping all 12 ships in normal space. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. All Krex vessels destroyed. Carter reported a few minutes later, no survivors. Similar reports came in from across the sector as other human ships completed their hunts. Lieutenant Colonel Brooks caught a group of Krex ships trying to hide in an asteroid field. Captain Hayes destroyed a damaged Krex cruiser that was attempting to send the distress call. Commander Williams hunted down 3 Krek scouts that were trying to escape with information about human tactics. In less than 2 hours, every Krek ship in the sector had been destroyed. Captain Morrison, Vexthara called, your fleet has accomplished something incredible. The Kreks have been driven from this entire region of space. Admiral, we're just getting started. The word sent another chill through the Coalition officers. What do you mean? Morrison's ship approached the Coalition flagship, and he requested permission to transport aboard. When he materialized on the bridge, his expression was grim and determined. Admiral, I need to inform you of a change in strategy. Earth Command has been monitoring this battle through our sensor networks. They're very pleased with the results. That's good news, isn't it? It is. But it also means we're moving to the next phase of operations. Morrison activated his portable display, showing a map of the entire galaxy. Red zones marked areas under Krek's control. There were hundreds of them, covering nearly half of known space. Phase 2 begins now, Morrison said. We're not going to wait for the Kreks to regroup. We're going to hunt them down in every system they control. Hunt them down? Commander Zektar asked. Captain, that would require thousands of ships and millions of troops. Morrison smiled that cold smile again. Commander, I told you that our 50 ships were just the advance force. The real fleet is on its way. He manipulated the display, showing new contacts appearing at the edge of sensor range. More human ships were arriving, lots of them. The computer began counting as they dropped out of hyperspace at 100 ships, 200, 500. The count kept rising. Admiral, Morrison continued, I'd like you to meet Admiral Patricia Stone, commander of the Earth Defense Force. A new voice came through the communication system, crisp and professional. Admiral Vexthara, this is Admiral Stone, Captain. Morrison has briefed me on the situation. I'm here to discuss the terms of Krek's surrender. Surrender terms? Vexthara was confused. Admiral Stone, the Kreks haven't surrendered. They've only been defeated in one battle. Admiral, they will surrender. We're going to give them a choice. They can surrender now, or we can destroy every Krek ship and military installation in the galaxy. That's impossible. The Krek's empire controls hundreds of star systems. Not for long, Stone replied. Admiral, may I show you something? The display changed, showing technical specifications for human weapons. Nuclear missiles, antimatter bombs, planet-cracking devices that could split worlds apart. Admiral Vexthara, Captain Morrison's fleet, was equipped for ship-to-ship combat. My fleet is equipped for total warfare. We have the capability to destroy entire star systems if necessary. The bridge fell silent. Vexthara stared at the weapon. Specifications in horror. The humans possessed enough firepower to sterilize half the galaxy. You would actually use these weapons? She asked quietly. If the Kreks refused to surrender unconditionally, yes. We didn't come here to fight a long war, Admiral. We came here to end one. Morrison stepped forward. Admiral, the Kreks Empire has 48 hours to surrender. If they don't, we will begin systematic destruction of their military forces. Every ship, every base, every weapon they possess will be eliminated. And if they still refuse, then we start targeting their home. Worlds, Stone said matter-of-factly. We'll give civilian populations time to evacuate, but we will destroy every planet they use for military purposes. This is madness, Commander Zektar protested. You're talking about genocide. No, Commander, Morrison corrected. We're talking about victory. The Kreks started this war. They chose to fight without mercy. Now they get to live with the consequences. What about the coalition? Vexthara asked. What happens to our governments, our laws, our way of life? Admiral Stone's voice softened slightly. Admiral, the Coalition can continue to exist. Your governments can keep their authority over your own people. But from now on, humans will handle galactic security. You're taking control of the entire galaxy? We're taking responsibility for keeping the peace, Morrison explained. The Coalition had 7 years to stop the Kreks. You couldn't do it. We did it in 37 minutes. So now you decide what's best for everyone? Admiral, would you prefer we go home and let the Kreks rebuild their fleets? Vexthara knew the answer to that question. Without the humans, the Kreks would return. Stronger than before. The Coalition couldn't stop them alone. What are your terms? She asked finally. Morrison activated his communicator. All frequencies, all languages. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. The Galactic Coalition is now under human protection. The Kreks Empire has 48 hours to surrender unconditionally. He paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. If they refuse, we will demonstrate why humans don't lose wars. Any species that supports the Kreks will be treated as enemies. Any species that supports peace will be protected. The communication ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Is that it? Vexthara asked. The war is over? Morrison looked out at the wreckage of the Kreks fleet floating in space around them. Admiral, the war ended the moment we arrived. Everything else is just cleanup. As human ships spread out across the galaxy to hunt down the remaining Kreks forces, Vexthara realized that the universe had changed forever. The age of Kreks domination was over. The age of humanity had begun.